As many of you already know, in the 2024 offseason, Jordan Love signed a 4-year, $220 million deal. This was after only one season as a starting quarterback in the NFL. However, as you look deeper, you also see similar trends across the NFL. These $40+ million a year contracts are just being thrown at these quarterbacks across the league. But are these quarterbacks actually worth what you're paying for them? And more importantly, do these quarterbacks deserve this money? In general, there is a tug-of-war dynamic between the teams and the players over contract situations. In an ideal situation, the team just has infinite wealth and can just pay whatever they want to try and buy a championship. This is a strategy most commonly seen in baseball, like with the LA Dodgers, as well as in soccer or football, where teams like Manchester City have won the league 6 out of the past 7 times. However, the NFL is different. To combat this type of league where money can just be tossed at players with little penalty, GMs and coaches have to strategically navigate around a salary cap. This salary cap effectively limits the total amount of money that teams can spend on players in a season. Generally, teams will try and spend as much as possible while trying to maintain a budget around the cap. But with this hard cap in place, why are teams still shelling out nearly a quarter of their cap space on underachievers such as Trevor Lawrence or Russell Wilson, for example? To start off, let's go back to the 1980s. Back in the 80s, the league was a lot more barren and rough. This was a time when the league was a lot less protective over their players and big hits went unpenalized. But most importantly, free agency didn't even exist, and there wasn't even a salary cap. Instead, they had the Plan B system. Teams had the right to protect 37 players from trying to sign with any other team. This meant that the team that drafted you had all the power in this negotiation, and the only way you could resist was to hold out and not accept the deal. One of the most famous examples of this was with the legendary Bo Jackson. Long before he became unstoppable in the Tecmo football games, Bo Jackson was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs were regularly drafting among the top in the first round, as many players wouldn't accept the terms of Hugh Culverhouse's offers. However, when Hugh offered Bo a 5-year deal, Bo Jackson took his talents to baseball to play for the Royals. And after 3 seasons, Bo Jackson would finally join the NFL under the Oakland Raiders, and the rest would be history. The controversy still wouldn't stop there, as in 1993, after 4 years of legal battles between the NFL and the Players Association, free agency was introduced to the NFL. And jointly, in an attempt to level the playing field a little, the NFL implemented a salary cap a year later. These wins allowed much more freedom for players and were the first step towards players holding power in the market. So let's fast forward to 2004. Before 2020, it was unheard of for a quarterback to be getting more than 16 or 17% of the team's salary cap. However, Steve McNair took up a whopping 23.22% of the Titans' cap when he signed a 6-year, $112 million deal. While this contract was revolutionary for its time, it would not pay off for the Titans, as McNair failed to live up to his MVP bid from 2003 and proceeded to leave the Titans after 2005. With McNair's contract being such a bust, it deterred teams from spending that much per season on a single player. Generational quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Drew Brees were only taking up 12% or less of the cap, but that wasn't until Patrick Mahomes took the NFL by storm. In just his first season under center for the Chiefs, Mahomes passed for 5,097 yards and 50 touchdowns, as well as rushing for 272 yards and another 2 touchdowns. This was enough to net Mahomes the MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, as well as the All-Pro First Team and a Pro Bowl appearance. And after back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, including a win in 2019, Mahomes was slated for a big extension. During the offseason, Mahomes would sign the biggest contract in NFL history for 10 years and $450 million. As arguably one of the greatest talents in the NFL, you could say that this deal was very well deserved, even after the sketchy past of 10-year contracts that the NFL has. But since that moment in 2020, there are 19 active quarterbacks in the NFL making $40 million or more, and of those 19, 12 of them are making on average more per year than Mahomes in 2024. So surely if they're making more than Mahomes, they'd have to be outperforming him. While Doug Drinnan made a quantifiable statistic to incorporate their passing and rushing stats, as well as any achievement they might have picked up during that time. According to Drinnan himself, approximate value is an attempt to put a single number on the seasonal value of a player at any position from any year.
So here's a graph of the 19 players' performance year by year since they signed their extensions. PFF's passer grade is on the x-axis and AV is there on the y-axis. As you can see, a great number of quarterbacks fall well below Mahomes' marks. So let's take a look at why they are making just as much, if not more than Mahomes. Think about it in the shoes of a quarterback. Generally, if your team is struggling, your job is not very secure because you're usually the first to take the blame for the offensive struggles. Now, as I'm not a professional athlete by any means, it'd be easy to say that I would take a pay cut in their shoes. What's taking 10 to 20 million less when I'm still making 10 million or more a year? But there's a ton of extraneous variables that come into play. Usually players have an agent who will come in and help the players prove their worth to the team so they can sign a big contract with as much money as they can squeeze out of the team. And because of that, the agent will usually take a significant chunk out of that contract. And when you're also having the government take a third or more of that paycheck, all of a sudden you're only making a fraction of what the team is paying you. This, combined with the fact that any injury could derail your career at any moment, definitely creates a tense work environment for anyone. In contrast, look at it from a team's perspective. If your team is just a piece or two away from making a run at a Super Bowl, logically you'd want to spend your cap on a franchise cornerstone to make sure they stick with you. The problem with this philosophy is that when these teams dish out $40 million deals, other quarterbacks around the same talent level will see this and try to demand as much, if not more, than what is already being offered on the market. And with the way quarterback prospects generally have pretty volatile career paths after the draft, teams are willing to spend on an established play caller rather than taking another spin at the roulette table. So with this in mind, does this spending lead to winning, and should these teams be tossing a quarter of their cap room at a single person? This is a graph showing the percentage of the cap space that a quarterback took up in the year that they won the Super Bowl. As you can see, there is no correlation between spending money and winning the Super Bowl. So why are teams trying to dump money on a quarterback rather than buy a serviceable veteran and stacking talent around him? We have entered into a phase of the league where players are chasing after guaranteed money on their contracts. And the days of veterans like Drew Brees and Tom Brady taking up 10 to 12% of the cap are gone. With the power in the hands of the players in contract negotiations now, there is seemingly a new quarterback being paid massive money every year. This creates a tense contract renewal process that often leads to holdouts. And more often than not, it is the players that ink the fresh new contract, even if it means coughing up 20% or more of the salary cap. So while owners see their quarterback as a franchise cornerstone, it might be time to reevaluate the market and look for better deals rather than paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year.
If you like this content, make sure to subscribe, and if you want to watch more, click in the top left corner.